Join me, 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty, on my podcast, My Life of Crime, as I take on true crime investigations like no other. This season, I'm looking into the labyrinth of crime and secrets within families. I'm cutting straight to the evidence and talking to the people directly involved, including investigators and the families of victims. Listen to My Life of Crime with Erin Moriarty wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
The following podcast is based on actual police dispatch recordings, police reports, witness testimony, and 911 calls.
A note to listeners. The following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
It was just a nightmare.
They got a pursuit?
Yeah, it's a black 2012 Honda Accord.
Are they still running with their lights off? We didn't know who was in the car. I mean, we had no idea.
Nobody deserved what happened to them.
It kind of broke my heart a little.
She is Native American. Molly is Chickasaw Nation.
Someone you grew up with has just vanished into thin air, and it's a lot of emotion.
It's just not fair. Everybody knows everybody within these two counties.
There's got to be someone else behind it that they're way more scared of that can get them out here or in jail.
We're talking in jail about all the locations that they said they'd taken Molly's remains.
If you want an answer, it's probably there.
It's just really weird that you being the sheriff's cousin, or the sheriff telling us, not to get involved, telling us not to talk to nobody.
I received information from a guy who claims he was there when everything happened to Molly and Colt.
Everything inside me that this day was going to be the day that we found her. There was not a doubt in my mind.
You're listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman. Wilson, Oklahoma is a slice of land in Carter County with a population just under 2,000. And just 30 miles to the south is Love County, an insulated pocket on the Texas border where strangers are met with nods and whispers. These two counties are in the heart of Chickasaw Country and Tornado Alley.
This is America's heartland, once a booming epicenter for oil and railroad tycoons. It became home to the vibrant Chickasaw Nation. And now, it's a hotspot for drug trafficking. Love and Carter County have been ravaged by an alarming methamphetamine epidemic.
The legends of the Native Americans whisper through the wind, reminding outsiders that Love and Carter County share deep roots. This is a place where everybody knows everybody and their secrets.
Some believe that tornadoes come through these parts just to rip everything open, so those secrets can breathe, and then maybe the truth will finally be revealed.
Molly Miller is half Chickasaw. She was born in Wilson, Oklahoma on April 30th, 1996. She lives with her grandparents and her mother. The Millers have lived in these parts for over a century.
Molly is a talented athlete. And Alex, her grandfather, proudly shows her softball trophies to anyone who visits. Molly is the light of his life.
Everybody knows Molly. She's feisty, rebellious, and she has a reputation for speaking her mind. And sometimes this gets her into trouble.
On June 28, 2013, Molly gets into a raging argument with her mother, Melissa. She takes off and goes to a friend's house.
These blow-ups didn't usually last long. Molly would always come back in a few days and they would make up. But this time was different because Molly met a new guy, and his name is Colt Haynes.
Colt is older and good-looking, and Molly has a huge crush on him. The problem is Colt has some drama. He has a baby with another girl, and he has a reputation around town, getting into trouble with the law and all that. But Colt is only 22 years old, and he's still trying to figure life out. Sometimes he makes the wrong decisions, like with the drugs. But that's another story. Molly has been hanging out with him for the past week, and tonight they're going to party with another friend, Con Nip.
Con Nip is just a spoiled 21-year-old kid who also lives with his grandparents, but he lives in Love County about 30 minutes from Molly. Con has a reputation for getting into trouble, but nothing ever seems to happen to him. The Nip family has long roots in Love County. They have also been there for over a half a century. And they live in a compound deep in the woods surrounded by thousands of acres of land.
There are lots of rumors about this family, but they have molded Love County, and everyone knows the Nips. Molly knows Con. In fact, she's even a distant cousin. But that's how things are here. People are connected.
And sometimes there's some bad blood between the families. And the Millers and the Nips, they have their moments over the years. But Molly and Con are friends and genuinely like each other. At least that's what Molly believes.
Con and Colt, well, they have their issues. Con used to date Colt's baby mama, and it was a bad relationship. An abusive relationship. So Con and Colt, they aren't really friends, which is why it's odd that they're hanging out so much. On Sunday, July 7th, 2013, temperatures soar past 100 degrees, with humidity so thick it's hard to move. They could get a twister at any time. The clouds are so thick that the moon is struggling to break through and finally gives up. The night is pitch black, the kind of darkness that forces you to blink a few times to adjust your eyes. Molly is ready to party. She's trying to persuade her girlfriend to go with them, but Jessica won't budge. And she warns Molly not to go either. You know there's so much drama with Con and Colt, she reminds Molly. But this doesn't change Molly's mind. Instead, she grabs her purse and her phone and hops in the car with Con Nip and Colt Haynes. Around 10:30 p.m., Con makes a pit stop at a convenience store to pick up some beer. It's a simple decision that will change the course of their lives forever.
At 10:46 p.m., Wilson PD Captain Ryan Parsley is in a parking lot across the street from the convenience store when a 2012 Honda Accord rips out in front of him, spraying gravel and hitting speeds of over 100 miles per hour. Parsley flips on his lights, but the car speeds up, igniting a pursuit, and Parsley is on his tail. He calls Wilson PD for backup.
July 7, 2013, 22:42, 51.
Wilson 2, be advised your radio is extremely staticky.
Stop. Subject can be wrecked driving, doing donuts through town in Wilson.
It's like a scene out of a movie. Within minutes, there are over a dozen police cars in pursuit.
Con Nip is taking police on a wild ride through the back roads of Oklahoma. He's driving them into traffic, turning his lights on and off, and Molly is in the back seat, holding on for dear life.
They're turning east on Water Moccasin right now. Yeah, it's a black 2012 Honda Accord. Are they still running with their lights off? Coming up on Oswald Road. Love County has sighted the vehicle. They are now in pursuit.
When Love County Sheriff's Department gets involved, they know exactly who it is.
And it's advised they do believe it's Con Nip.
And they know exactly where he is going.
Probably going to Long Hollow.
Good vehicle. We're lost sight. We are heading eastbound towards Long Hollow on Oswald. They probably went all the way to the end. They're going to hit the woods again like they did last time.
Con races into the thick woods and shakes the police.
I don't know exactly. There's a lot of gravel, smoke and debris in the roadway. This is the end of Long Hollow. Lost visual of it. The gates at the end are closed. Doesn't appear to be any tracks at the end.
They have lost sight of the vehicle. They do not see him.
3160.
Correction, 3160.
I bet you bad. They're going to be on Corder County.
He freaking went out on a dirt road and they lost him, so they're still out looking.
I know.
The M20 Pike Road in Long Hollow. I'm coming back down. There was a lot of gravel, smoke and debris in the roadway just back west of Long Hollow. I come all the way to the end of Long Hollow. Down at the end, gates closed, chains on the fence, no fresh tracks. But like I said, in between Long Hollow and Pike Road, there was a whole bunch of smoke. I don't know if there was a driveway or something they may have taken up through there.
Con dumps the car and heads home.
But Molly and Colt are left in the woods.
Police spot a white pickup truck near Long Hollow Road and Pike.
Dispatch, I got a guy flashing me down here in this pasture. I'm south of Pike. It's gonna be a white Ford pickup, be a white male, jeans, no shirt.
Officers continue to patrol the area looking for any sign of Con and the Honda.
Molly and Colt are running through the woods. It's so dark you can't see in front of you. The area is massive. Thousands of acres of brush, thorns, makes it so hard to run, and there's dangerous wildlife lurking in the bushes. This is rattlesnake country, and it's high season.
Police sirens are still blaring in the distance. Colt climbs into a tree and tries to see if he can figure out where they are, but he falls to the ground and breaks his leg. He's screaming in pain.
While Molly is frantically calling friends for help. But the cell service is sketchy. Then at 12:48 a.m., Molly accidentally calls 911. She doesn't identify herself, and the operator has no idea that she is the person who was in the back seat of the car during the high-speed chase. And the operator doesn't know that Molly might be in danger.
Finally, Colt gets through to his friend, Devin Johnson. "I'm bleeding. I broke my leg. You gotta come get me. We need help. We are somewhere near Long Hollow Road." At 1:30 a.m., Wilson PD decides to call it a night and they can't find the car.
Molly knows these woods. She's spent time on Long Hollow Road. But in the dark, she's afraid she'll get lost and she just won't leave Colt. Meanwhile, Molly and Colt's friends, Benita Long, Devin Johnson, Colby Turner, and Rob Nichols, take flashlights and four-wheelers and head into the woods. But it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. After a few hours, they decide to go home and wait for first light. The next morning at 6 a.m., Molly finally gets through to her friend.
At 9 a.m., the search party, Benita, Devin, Colby, and Rob are still looking for Colt and Molly. Colt tells them to go to Con Nip's house because he knows exactly where he left them.
When the group arrives at Con's house, the Nip family surrounds them. Con doesn't know anything. You go get out of here. But the group isn't buying it. Con, where are they? Con shrugs. I have no idea what you're talking about.
They call Colt and they put him on the phone with Con. "Here, you talk to him. He says you know where they are."
Con says, "I told you, I don't know where they are." But he grabs the phone.
Colt is screaming, "You better come get us, you motherfucker. You left us here."
Jennifer Nip, Con's aunt, tells the group to leave. "You're trespassing. You better get out of here." At 9:30 a.m., Molly talks to another friend.
The group heads back to the woods and continues the search. There are no more calls on either Molly or Colt's phone after 10 a.m. on July 8th, 2013.
And Molly and Colt are never seen again.
But today we're going to speak to the actual 911 operator who worked that night and took Molly's call.
Erica, thank you so much for speaking with us today. I also have my partner in true crime here, my husband, Rob Dorfman.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Erica? Nice to meet you.
Good, how are you? Nice to meet you.
The 911 call has always been a question mark for us because, you know, we did the TV show and there was so much speculation about this 911 call, so I'm very excited to speak to you about that today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you were doing at the time that Molly went missing?
Yes, I mean, I was working.
What was your job?
911 dispatcher at Love County Sheriff's Department, or E911, excuse me.
And how long had you worked there prior to this call?
Yeah, I had worked there 2 years.
On July 7th, 2013. Can you just walk me through what happened that night and what the call was and what you thought of it?
We get a lot of 911 calls there. I would say probably half of them were pocket dials or accidental dials. So policy was that if we didn't hear anything or, you know, if it just hung up or things like that, you know, you just hear buttons dialing. You listen, see if you can hear anything, and then if the call disconnects or you feel like it's a pocket dial, you go ahead and you hang up and you call back just to check to make sure everything was okay. And so after the pursuit, after the buttons were being pressed, the phone got disconnected, so I had called back. Been many years, many 911 calls since then. I can't remember if it went just directly to voicemail and no one picked up at all, or if it rang and then went to where I couldn't leave a message or anything.
But you didn't talk to her?
No, ma'am.
Were there other 911 calls coming in that night after the chase?
Oh, I'm sure.
From people like, because we had heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but we had heard that Colt's friends were calling 911.
No. Not to our 911 center.
Okay.
I mean, if they were in Carter County, then it would have pinged to Carter County or, you know, whatever county they were in.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So if someone is in Love County and they call 911, even if it's by an accident, it's going to ping to you.
The 911 system is pesky. So sometimes we would get calls from 911 calls from Texas because we were so close to the border. Sometimes we would get Texas calls, and vice versa. Sometimes Texas would get Oklahoma calls. It's just whichever tower they were closer to that they pinged off of.
Okay, so Molly, this 911 call that comes in, you had no idea that there was someone in distress?
Correct.
When you call back, there was no one there. So then what's the procedure after that?
That's it. I mean, unless they call back again, and then it just kind of resets and you start it again. And if nobody's answering, then you call back. We didn't get another ping-up call from that number the rest of the night. Hindsight's 2020, but at that point, we had no idea that that was her that had called until a long, long time later. We didn't know who was in the car or if anybody else was in the car. I mean, we had no idea.
But did you guys know that it was Con Nip?
At the time of the pursuit, yes.
So at the same time that 911 call was coming in, were you overhearing the dispatch of the officers talking to each other during the pursuit? Did you know, were you aware of that happening?
Absolutely.
They're turning east on Water Moccasin right now. Yeah, it's a black 2012 Honda Accord. Are they still running with their lights off? Coming up on Oswald Road. Love County has 5 vehicles there now in pursuit.
Units advised they do believe it's Con Nip.
I can't remember if I called the pursuit or if my coworker had even called the pursuit. I mean, that was, I guess, and that at the time it was just another pursuit. But, yeah.
And what made you guys think that it was Con Nip?
I believe it was the Wilson officer who came on the radio and said that he believed that it was Con.
He had done that before?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, tell me about Con Nip. What was his reputation around town?
A drug addict, a drug dealer. He ran from cops all the time.
So that was something they were used to.
Yeah.
And he would get away with it.
No, I mean, they would chase him down, and half the time they would get him, the other half the time they wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of depending on, I guess, which officer or deputy was working, whether or not, and how well he knew the area to be able to get away.
Yeah, so when he drove to Long Hollow, he knows that area.
Right.
So my other question is this. Joe Russell, did he call in that night? Because I heard someone talking to, some man kept calling in and checking on the status of the chase.
If, I can't remember, however, if it was somebody who had called in and you could barely understand anything that he was saying, that was probably Joe Russell.
Did Joe Russell, do you know, to your knowledge, did he call off the chase?
I do not remember him calling off the chase, no.
Okay. What's Love County like?
Love County is, and I don't know if it's the same way now. I don't ever really go to Love County anymore. But there's a lot of drugs. There was a lot of drugs. I don't know how it is now. I don't go through there or anything. But then there was a lot of drugs. There was a lot of bad stuff happening. I believe Joe Russell is as crooked as they come. And I'm very, very, very pro-police. And I think that there are more good officers and deputies out there than there are bad, but Joe is not a good one.
Can you imagine being a teenager and having your best friend disappear?
It has to be surreal because at that age, you think that you're invincible.
Exactly. And to have all this speculation flying around and never knowing what happened. I mean, I can't even imagine what Molly's friends have been through. Today, we're going to speak to Courtney, who was on the TV show with us.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much for talking to us today. I have Rob here also.
Hey, Courtney, how are you?
I don't know if you remember.
I'm trying to, but...
Yeah, I was the director and the producer. You know,
He was just that guy behind the camera.
I might be 24, but I have a very bad memory.
It's okay, honey. Don't worry.
It's okay.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you just to kind of understand, because we're doing this podcast now to help Paula and to help Molly, to try to find out if someone's going to say something that maybe can help us figure out what happened. Because it's been now since we talked to you 3 years and still nothing's happened, which is really upsetting.
In my opinion, I feel like something would have came up from Con or somebody. Got to be someone else behind it that they're way more scared of that can get them out here or in jail.
Do you have some ideas in your head on who you think that could be?
Because I'm not like I don't know those types of crowds or anybody that would run around it, so...
Yeah.
I barely even know people in my town.
Yeah, I understand.
I wanted just to hear from you about Molly and what kind of person she was and what your friendship was like before all this happened.
Yeah, because I think whenever we met, her mom had just gotten a tattoo for her mom passing, and I didn't know my mom and her were friends. Just hopped in the car. I didn't know who she was, and she was just like, well, let's just go hang out. It's like, I don't know you, lady. She could get you out of your comfort zone really, really quickly, but you'd still be comfortable at least.
Was that the beginning of your friendship?
Yep, she just hopped right in the car.
So she was a risk taker.
Very, very.
How old were you when that happened?
13? 7th going into 8th, I think.
Yeah, so around 4 years before all this happened.
Yeah.
So when you guys started becoming friends, did you hang out all the time?
My mom would have to ground us from each other, and her papa would have to.
Why is that?
If you seen one, you knew the other one was right behind. We weren't anywhere without each other. Like, Papa Alex would just say, y'all stressing me out. Y'all just take a break from each other.
So you guys were like sisters?
Yeah.
The last time that you saw Molly, what happened?
I seen her July 4th was actually the last time. We had Taylor with us.
Okay, so July 4th was like 3 days before this happened.
Yeah, because Wilson had a fireworks show, and us three were going to go watch it and stuff, and then she was like, man, this is boring. And she just said, I'm going to go. And then she went walk in and got in the truck with, I think it was Levi, and then just took off. I had to go to my dad's that night, so I didn't.
You couldn't go out.
Yeah.
Who was Levi? Is that another friend?
But I'm sure his name's been around.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't dating him.
No, she just got him for a ride, and then she probably went. There's no telling, because I seen Levi later, and he had some other guy with him.
Later that night?
Yeah, like within probably 30 minutes. I said, "Where's she at?" He said, "I don't know. She had me drop her off at the store, and then she just took off." In which that is Molly. You never know.
She just did her own thing.
Yeah.
Did she ever tell you about her relationship with Colt Haynes before she went missing?
She never told me. I had no idea.
She wouldn't talk about him. She didn't. You knew nothing about him even beforehand.
And I don't think Taylor did either.
Did she have a boyfriend, or did she talk about any boys that she liked or anything?
There was one, and that was Tanner Skelton.
Tanner, yeah.
Yeah, he's which they had been broken up for a while, but when they broke up, it didn't last. So we just figured
they were still kind of dating back and forth.
She lived her own style and stuff, and never knew what she was gonna do. And from the moment of me being at my dad's on July 4th till that day, a whole lot of crap was completely different that I had no idea of.
What did you find out about those 3 days leading up to her disappearance?
I didn't hear from her.
Was that unusual?
No.
So she would drop off the radar, like you'd hang out for a little bit, and then you wouldn't hear from her,
Yeah.
3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and then she would just come and pop back in and like nothing ever
Yeah,
happened.
whoever she was like hanging out with, she'd be preoccupied. She didn't care much for her phone. She lived in the moment, and so whenever she would be home, charge her phone or whatever, that's when I'd hear from her.
So you didn't hear from her at all after that 4th of July?
Until whenever she tried to call that morning, but I was asleep, so.
And this was the morning after the car chase?
Yeah, when they were all calling all their friends and stuff. My phone call was at around 6:30 in the morning.
And you didn't answer the phone?
I was knocked out at 6:30.
Did she leave a message?
Because I know I was half awake and my dad was getting ready for work, and I texted her like, "What's up?" or I'm sleeping, what's up? And I did not hear a single word. I texted her after I woke up like 3 or 4 different times.
You didn't think anything like this would have happened to her?
No. That would be the last thing on my mind for still nothing. I just thought whatever it was, she's busy now.
When did you find out that Molly was missing?
I think it was the next day, because I was being a, teenage rebel, and I told my dad that I was going home, but I didn't tell Mom I was going home. And I went to hang out with Levi, and me and him hung out the whole night. Never seen Molly, never heard Molly, anything about her. And because Mom asked me if I knew where she was at, they said she took off. I said, no, I have no idea. And I really didn't, because my mom still bugs me about it. She says, if you know anything, I said, Mom, do you think for Molly to be like a sister to me, I would have told everybody the instant anybody asked, because I've done it before. When she was dating Tanner, I think it was a year or 2 before this, her stepdad said to come home at 10. She looked at me and said, should I go home? I said, yes, Molly. And she said, no. Went to Tanner's and tried to stay the night in his camper behind his grandparents, and her stepdad came uptown. He said, do you know where she's at? I said, yeah, she's at Tanner's. No hesitation. He said, I was there. He said, did you check the camper behind the house?
Did she not like being at home, or is it she was just being a rebellious teenager?
She just didn't like to stay in one spot.
When did you first think something was wrong?
Whenever my mom was crying and freaking out, asking if I was with her that night, I said, no. And I just didn't think nothing of it because, Molly would take off sometimes, but when names were flying, I had no idea because when she would take off, it was with Tanner. So I was completely confused.
So you didn't know that she would be hanging out with Con and Colt. That was not a normal thing.
Well, with Con, yeah, that was, but the Colt Haynes, I had never even heard of Colt Haynes stuff. I knew of his brother, Dove. Molly never said anything to me. His name wasn't thrown around with anybody in my age group, so.
Because he was older.
Yeah.
And what about Con? What did you know about him?
But she was related to him.
This week we have some news out of Love County.
What happened?
Well, it's very upsetting. The new sheriff in Love County, Marty Grisham, who has been really, really, really proactive in trying to solve this case. For the past 2 years, he's been working diligently with another investigator in trying to figure out what exactly happened. Unfortunately, he passed away this week. So it's upsetting because he really was adamant that he wanted to solve this case and he wanted to get justice for the family. And that was his main mission as sheriff.
He actually brought in a new investigator, not affiliated with Love County, and we're going to talk to him in another episode. He will reveal what Marty's plan was to try to find the killers for Molly and Colt, and he really did a thorough job. We feel bad that he wasn't able to finish the job. I just wish we knew what it was he died of.
And also to send condolences to his family and
Yes.
his friends because he was a very nice man and really actually wanted to help. This week, Paula has decided to come and tell us new information that we've never heard before. And it's quite shocking.
There's a lot of theories that have been going around, and we've heard a myriad of them. And I think she's going to give us another theory from something that she's heard through the grapevine. And
Also something that happened in the first week of the investigation, which we did not know until recently. We're just going to call Paula now.
One of the first people that Con Nip called the morning of the 8th was Rob Branch. And he's Con's cousin. Rob is also the same person that Alex Miller and Michael Miller and Judge Hogan had gone and talked to the week that Molly disappeared because they had heard that Molly had been over there. So they went to his house and spoke to him. And he stated that he had taken a freezer out to the Nip property.
What kind of freezer?
Well, I don't know if it was an upright freezer or a chest-type freezer, but it was a freezer.
Did he say what it was for?
No, he didn't tell them. When I questioned Alex about that time frame, I wanted to know a time frame that him and Michael and Donnie had gone over to Rob Branch's house. I said, what day of the week was that? Do you recall? And he says he thought it was that Friday. After Molly went missing on Monday, he thinks it was that following Friday that they went out there. And Rob told him that he had taken a freezer. I don't recall who asked him for the freezer, whether it be Colby or Con. But one of them had asked him to bring a freezer out there, and he did.
Did he often do stuff like this for Con and Colby before? Like, was he a kind of guy that would normally run errands for them and do stuff for them?
You know, I honestly don't know if he had or not.
When was the freezer delivered?
Earlier that week. So sometime after between Monday and Friday. Alex said it was about Friday that they went to Rob Branch's house and spoke to him. So, and he had stated earlier in the week he had taken a freezer out there. Yeah.
So was he ever questioned by the police, Rob Branch?
Ronnie Hampton did go question him and his family. His grandparents lived next door a little ways down the road. Did question and talk to them. I believe it was an aunt of Rob Branch's, told Ronnie, I need to speak to you out on the porch, and took him out on the porch. And I'm sure there's probably a statement to this effect in his stuff, that took him outside and told him something happened down there at Rob Branch's house.
Okay.
Even some in his family believe that there's some sort of involvement with Rob. And now the daughter of Rob that nobody seemed to know about, Even Wilson and I said, I've talked to and asked about this daughter. They had no idea Rob Branch had a daughter. She's now 17 years old. She is being raised by her uncle on her mom's side. Her mom's in prison. She's 17 now, and she started acting out and stuff. The girl lives in Fort Worth with her uncle. So she was 9 when Molly went missing. But anyway, they were having problems with her, and they had heard that Rob was doing well. So they called him up, asked him if he would take her for a while and see if he couldn't straighten her out. Well, that was a mistake. Rob abused her sexually, from what she says, and mentally and physically was abusing her. And they've got pictures of the physical abuse. But she told her uncle when he would get drunk and high and stuff in the evenings, he would start talking about Molly. But she did say that Rob told her that she is buried and concrete was poured over the top of her, concrete slab. The uncle, when I first spoke to him, told me that some sort of building was erected on top of this concrete slab, and she's buried underneath it. And I asked him, I said, did she mention anything about a dog pen? And he said she didn't, but he said, when I get back home, I'll ask. He had only spoke to her the night before. She had just come back from Rob's.
Recap here. So she told the person that she heard that Molly was buried in concrete and a structure is on top of her. And
Right.
you said you think said something about a dog pen.
One of the tips that we got in the beginning was that they buried her. They put a concrete slab on top of her and put the dog pen, built the dog pen on top of that. It's behind John Knipp's house.
So it's on the Knipp property.
Mm-hmm. So the FBI and the OSBI got the tip as well back in 2014, and they went out there on this tip, and they did let them go back there. They just looked around the dog pen. They didn't do anything with the cement slab or didn't take any equipment or anything of that nature. I recall Justin Brown calling me after the fact and telling me, well, we went and checked it out. I said, did you jackhammer that concrete up? And he was like, no, Paula, we can't go on people's property and start destroying their property. We're going to go back with ground penetrating equipment. I'm like, great. Never happened.
They never went back with the ground penetrating radar.
No, never.
Did they tell you why they didn't?
No. They just never followed through. They never vet out a tip from start to finish.
And that is OSBI?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then to circle back to where we are now. So Rob Branch, one of the people that was one of the last people to be with Molly, his daughter has recently said that Molly comes up in conversation when her father, Rob Branch, is drunk or doing drugs. And she has now told her uncle that he was rambling on about how Molly was buried under the cement slab that you got a tip on in the days following her disappearance. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How soon after her disappearance did this happen?
Did we get this tip?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know the exact date, but I can tell you that on, I think it was September the 1st of 2013 is when me and Mandy and Misty went to Con Knipp's house asking the grandpa if we could go back there and look at the dog pen, because we had already gotten that tip. So we're talking in like 3 months. Within 3 months within 3 months after her disappearance, we'd already had this information.
Could they tell that the cement recent? Could they at least, because you usually could tell that if it's only 3 months.
How long was it from the time that Molly went missing, the OSBI went out there to look?
Oh, that was over a year.
Okay.
Over a year.
Yeah,
So,
so
3
it-
months after.
Yeah.
3 months after it happened, you guys were there, but they wouldn't let you in the back to look at the pen, correct?
Right.
And then a year later is when the OSBI went out there and said they couldn't find anything, or that they were going to go back with ground penetrating equipment, and they did not.
Right.
Okay. So now we circle back to this young woman now that you've been trying to get OSBI to speak to, Rob Branch's daughter, and they haven't done that yet.
Right.
And have they formally questioned Rob Branch?
No. OSBI has not.
Okay. Just the state troopers did.
Yeah.
Search warrant is pending in Love County. Investigators hope it could hold the answers to where Molly Miller and Colt Haynes are and have been for the past 8 years. News 12's Emily Tabar spoke with a private investigator on the case. Where are they trying to search, Emily?
Jen, private investigator Philip Klein says a probable cause affidavit was submitted to the judge today for a property on Pike Road in the county. It's close to where Molly and Colt were last seen alive, but part of it was never searched.
It's time to bring this to an end. It's time to bring Molly and Colt home.
Klein Investigations was hired by Molly Miller's family 7 years ago, a year after they went missing. Monday afternoon, they announced a search warrant was pending for a property on Lane Road, near where Miller and Colt Haynes were last seen.
It's one little area that, to be honest with you, we were told had been searched, but had not been searched. We were within 600 yards when we did the dig about 2 or 3 years ago.
Klein says a couple years ago, all of the case's investigators and law enforcement agencies combined their findings to submit this search warrant.
They have been able to put together a very good timeline. They've done a great job out there. I mean, I can't tell you how exciting it is when you get everybody working together.
The FBI opened their case this year on the 7th anniversary of their disappearance.
We think the general public needs to know, hey, we're still working on this, and B, this is a huge break.
Right now, Klein won't give an update on James Conn Knipp, the man allegedly last seen with Miller and Haynes, in fear of affecting the integrity of the case.
There are some other things that are involved in the search warrant that you can read about when it's released, if or when the judge signs it, and if or when the district attorney accepts it from law enforcement, which I believe he will. I believe he'll do it.
It's taken years of hard work and teamwork to get to this point, and Klein knows it's only the beginning.
I just pray that this brings 7 years of hell to a close and calm. And now let's prosecute the people that did this.
Unfortunately, a judge denied that search warrant on November 30th, 2021.
When Sheriff Joe Russell was arrested and forced to resign from Love County Sheriff's Department in 2016, Marty Grisham became the sheriff, and he promised he would do whatever he could to help find Molly and Colt. But the investigation continued to stall.
In 2020, Marty hired Jackie Bates, a former law enforcement officer from outside of Love County. Jackie's sole purpose was to reinvestigate all of the evidence in Molly and Colt's case, looking for clues that might have been missed.
Jackie is actually the one that prepared that search warrant.
And it's confusing to us why a judge would deny it. But Jackie has agreed to speak with us, so let's give him a call.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Jackie. How are you?
Hey, how y'all?
I'm okay. My husband Rob
checking.
is here too.
Hey, Jackie, how are you?
Hey, Rob.
How you been?
Pretty good.
Good.
That's good. So I just wanted to catch up with you from the last time that we spoke. You told us that you were going to go try to get a search warrant for that area that you wanted to search for Molly and Colt. Can you kind of get us up to date on what's happened since then?
Yeah, I filed a search warrant. Thought it was pretty good. Did we send you a copy of that?
No. The search warrant? No.
Yeah, I should send you a copy of the search warrant. Anyway, the DA said, well, I think you have probable cause that they might be there. But he was afraid digging in a creek might create an erosion problem. He's afraid the county would get sued. It was kind of interesting, though, because when he asked the sheriff, Marty, he says, the county could get sued. Aren't you worried about that? And Marty was like, no, this has to be done. I was so proud of him.
Mm-hmm.
But the DA still, between that and the judge, I could never get a search warrant. And the landowner, he didn't really want us. I don't think he was worried about erosion because we could have made the creek better, but because it's not that big a creek.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't want the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
He's building a house out there. He's retiring. He really don't want people around. Of course, my viewpoint is, well, the people that live behind you could be murderers. They might not be, but the evidence is in your backyard.
Yeah.
I would want to know.
Yeah.
That seems like it's a really kind of weird technicality about erosion on.
It's ridiculous. It's kind of like doing no-knock search warrants and search warrants in general. There's liability to it always. Look at the news. When you break down a door and go in someone's home, there's some liability. But what liability is they're digging in dirt?
Yeah.
You're just being paranoid about it.
Well,
I need
also,
to send you because the search warrant outlines some of the evidence, not all of it,
mm-hmm.
but enough to create, I would say, probable cause that they're there. I didn't use probable cause of a crime because, there could be a crime. Evidence would, if you just look at everything that's out there, one would say there's a possible homicide here. There's plenty of talk that there's a homicide. And the fact that my investigation led me that I don't know if they're both there, but there's human remains in the creek. I would bet if Colt fell in that creek, and he was murdered, I think he was left there.
Yeah.
Molly, I don't know. I can't explain how they would both, just unless, it was super hot and they still had dope and they thought doing dope would make things better. In that heat, that wouldn't have been the thing to do. I can come up with all sorts of scenarios, but my problem is my path that I was on for the investigation, it came to a screeching halt.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
In the coming weeks, we have some exciting things happening. We have received dozens of requests from our audience to speak to the corruption in the county. We have heard dozens of stories of how people have suffered because of these abuses of power by elected officials.
We're going to be discussing some of these stories with locals and experts to help initiate some changes in the community. We're also going to create an open forum on the podcast.
We're going to have an episode that is completely interactive. We want to hear from you. What are your questions or thoughts on the case? What would you like to discuss with us? And do you have any information to share?
Please submit your questions or comments with your phone number on the website if you would like to be on the podcast or you would like us to discuss your question or comment.
You can submit this information confidentially directly on the podcast at the bottom of the first page where it says contact.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Partners in True Crime is launching an exciting new podcast, The Killing Hour with Doc Bond. Famous criminologist and author Dr. Scott Bond will be joining Rob and I on a deep dive into true crime and serial killers. It'll be an exploration into the mind of one of the world's most notorious serial killers, Dennis Rader, aka BTK.
We will be joined by special guests featuring BTK's daughter, BTK's prison guard, New York Times best-selling author and Emmy-winning filmmaker Mark Olshaker, the creator of Mindhunters, and more.
Join us every Wednesday as we investigate the sadistic, dark world of serial killers to understand what makes them tick. Learn the signs of these psychopaths who walk among us, because how well do you really know anyone?
If you have any information regarding the case, please contact the BIA at www.bia.gov/BIA/missing-murder-unit.
You can also call their hotline with tips at 1-833-560-2065 and email them directly at ojs_mmu@bia.gov.
And if you want to text them with a tip, text keyword BIA-MMU and send your tip to 847-411.
Check the Partners in True Crime website for this and any additional information.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.